Americans view public education as the most direct pathway to economic opportunity, justice, and equality. But more than 60 years after Brown v. Board of Education promised to remove racial barriers in education, policymakers continue to betray that promise by investing less in communities most impacted by the legacies of racism, intentional divestment, and low expectations. For too many Black children, access to high-quality public education and the opportunities it provides remains an unrealized and distant dream. All too often, communities of color are left outside of education reform efforts, just as students of color and low-income students are left behind in their education. Regrettably, reform is something that happens to these students, families, and communities, instead of something authentic that happens with and for them as a result of their own agency, engagement, and leadership.
So what happens is that a lot of Black and brown students are receiving below grade level work because the presumption is that because the students don't come from an affluent or from an economically advantaged segment of the community that they can't learn, they can't handle the work that is at their particular grade level. And the research that we are familiar with clearly demonstrates that if we give students the grade level work, even if they're a little behind, they eventually catch up. They'll perform at high levels, like students who might be a little further advanced at the beginning.
In 2010, the National Urban League launched the Equity and Excellence Project, or EEP, to support local, state, and national advocacy. We engage in reform efforts by leveraging our greatest asset, the Urban League movement, and the presidents and chief executive officers who lead it. For the last decade, the EEP has elevated the voices of students, parents, and community stakeholders as we have advanced a shared vision of education reform and innovation that expands opportunity, disrupts inequity, and accelerates progress.
We know that it changes the trajectory for every student, not just students of color, when they are taught by a teacher of color. And we know that it makes a difference in all of their lives. And so we want to work as hard as we can with as many partners as we can to achieve that.
For the National Urban League, equity is defined as an ongoing process that removes historic and existing barriers and creates a system of opportunity so all students have the necessary resources to reach their full potential. The National Urban League wants state and district leaders to use their available policy and resource levers in order to provide all students with high quality and equitable education. Over the last 10 years, the EEP has grown from providing critical thought leadership and advancing educational equity and innovation in just 2 states, Tennessee and Pennsylvania, to now reaching more than 20 states with an eye towards improving education across the nation. As a part of this goal, in 2019, the National Urban League issued an authoritative evaluation of the approved state education plans entitled The Standards of Equity and Excellence, a Lens on ESSA State Plans.
Our participation in the Equity and Excellence Project really elevated our status as an advocate for education reform in the state of Nebraska. With the writing of the state's ESSA plan and now the implementation of the state's ESSA plan, we have provided that voice, the conscience, if you will, of the community to ensure that our community is represented in those discussions around policy, in those discussions around allocation of resources. We ensured that not only were there staff and personnel hired and dedicated to the administration and implementation of the ESSA plan, the state of Nebraska has an equity team.
To extend learning and deepen understanding, the Urban League movement holds local, statewide, and national convenings for community leaders and stakeholders. Our convenings provide a platform where promising practices, critical data, and impactful research are disseminated to stakeholders, and education policies are clarified through a civil rights-based and community-focused lens.
One of the things that we were able to do with an education summit that we had in 2018 in New York City was to bring together the urban leagues from throughout the state. And we did a data walk and really looked and saw where it is that young people have access to higher and more rigorous educational opportunities and where they don't. And we did that not only with parents, but we did it with young people. And it was so powerful to see the young people looking at that data and realizing, wait a minute, those numbers, those statistics are true for me and they're true for the young people in my school. And so we developed an action plan based on that information.
To elevate the promise of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, the NUL launched No Ceilings on Success, a national campaign to hold states accountable to civil rights protections and to developing reforms designed to produce better educational outcomes. The No Ceilings on Success website serves as a resource and advocacy hub for those committed to educational equity and excellence. There you can find educational news you can use, helpful parent videos, the latest NUL education reports, our letters to Congress, recaps of our convenings, and so much more. The Urban League movement believes that education is teaching, learning, and development wherever they take place for students, both in classrooms and in other spaces across a community. We have changed the educational landscape with reform and engagement efforts focused on 7 key goals that correspond to our historic mission and shared vision for a nation where every American child is ready for college, work, and life. As states and districts are even more responsible for education reform and innovation under ESSA, urban communities, the larger African American community, must be meaningfully engaged in setting educational goals. The strength and vitality of a community is dependent upon the quality of its public education. Its impact can be seen in every aspect of daily life, from health to employment to criminal justice to home ownership.
And so we have many conversations in Indianapolis taking place around inclusive economics. Well, how can you have inclusive economics if your young people do not have access to quality schools and quality education? If you don't have that, then how can you be prepared for college or careers that may yield a livable wage? And if you can't do that, then you can't have affordable housing, you can't have access to affordable health care and quality services. So what kind of quality of life are you setting young people up for? And so we know it all starts with education, no matter how much people may want to diminish the importance of education, but we do know that that's still the key for most of us overcoming poverty.
The Equity and Excellence Project is the National Urban League's powerful and effective response to the most pressing civil rights issue of the 21st century, the provision of a high-quality and equitable education to all students.
As the president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh, I believe in education the way that my parents believed in education and the way that they taught me. And my father used to say all the time, if you get it up here, nobody can take it away. My father did not finish grade school, and he was one of the smartest people that I know. But he encouraged us, education, education, education. And that's what I would like to continue to promote for all of our children throughout the greater Pittsburgh area and beyond. For the parents to love and understand education, for them to be supportive of their children, for the children to understand and embrace education and what that future can be.
We must engage all stakeholders, from public education and out of school time to public health and higher education, across philanthropy, workforce development, and industry. With the meaningful engagement of students and families, all sectors and stakeholders must be aligned towards educational equity and excellence. Success is only possible together, and only together can we truly deliver on the promise of education that we hold for the nation's students.